Hi there, this is DM Nell, and this is another edition of SOTDL Talk, and I am going to cover one of the things that really attracted me to the Kickstarter, and that was Robert Schwab's pitch about how Shadow of the Demon Lord, an entire campaign, could be played over just 11 sessions. And this really appealed to me. Being a let's just say middle-aged guy, uh, doing the adult thing with family and kids and all that job stuff. It's getting more and more difficult to get friends together to play a game, let alone to do a whole campaign. So more often than not, I'm finding myself starting a campaign, but not being able to finish it. So when I read the Kickstarter pitch, and it talked about being able to finish a whole campaign over 11 sessions. I was very intrigued by the concept. So that's one of the reasons why I bought into the game. And today I'm going to talk about campaigns and the type of campaigns that you can run with Shadow of the Demon Lord. And I'm going to talk about the one that I did run, which is the one that is showing on the screen here, Tales of the Demon Lord. Now, the campaign pitch that was given was that you could play a full campaign over 11 sessions, assuming that you level up your party after each game session. So that really kind of puts a lot of pressure on the DM to be able to run a full story, a full game, each session. That is pretty challenging, even for an experienced DM, and I've DM'd for many years, a couple decades at least, and being able to start an adventure and finish that adventure in one session has always been very challenging, especially since my game sessions only last 3 hours and I play online these days. Fitting a whole game into 3 sessions or 3 hours is tough. But the interesting thing about the adventures that are written for Shadow of the Demon Lord and for this campaign, Tales of the Demon Lord, is that the adventures are very short. Unlike adventure modules of old, and definitely unlike the adventure paths that are being put out today by Paizo and by Wizards of the Coast, the adventures that are in this campaign book, and in fact all the adventures that have been released for the game, fit on an average of about 4 pages of text, and that includes the maps and all the sidebars and everything. So it's really kind of designed to keep your story focused and to keep the story moving along so that you can tell a whole campaign over 11 sessions. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't done it over 11 sessions. I ran this particular campaign, and it took several months, but that's because it was my first Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign. It was the first time I had run the game for this particular group, and so I wanted to give them the full taste of the game. I didn't want to condense it down to just short tidbits that they would just miss out on a big part of the game. So I instead ran it like I run my D&D games and just kind of let the story take on its own pace. I didn't try to force it into one game, one adventure per session. But the average number of sessions that it took me to run through an adventure was about 2 to 3. About 2 was the average. Well, I found that I would have kind of the first session would be more of a role-playing session and getting role-playing and exploration session. So you have your map, you know your location, you talk to people, figure out what's going on, and then the second session would be actually getting into the meat of the adventure, having your combats and finishing up. And sometimes that would spill over into 3 sessions. I think maybe once or twice it spilled over into 4 sessions. So I would say the average was about 2 um, 2 game sessions of about 3 hours per session. So if your gaming sessions last longer than 3 hours, then it's possible that you can uh, pace yourself more and still be able to finish an adventure in one session. So anyway, getting back to Tales of the Demon Lord, this particular adventure path, for lack of a better term, campaign is a better term, I guess. It is actually broken up into several chapters. The first couple of chapters are, the credits, introduction, and then you get into some background of the city that your campaign is starting in, which in this particular adventure is the city of Crossings, which is in the area of the continent that's known as the Northern Reach. The first chapter is not an adventure. It's just the background of the city and the NPCs that reside there. And then you actually get into the adventures with chapter 2 with Harvester of Sorrows. This assumes that you're starting your group at level 0. So at level 0, you go through Harvester of Sorrow, and when you finish Harvester of Sorrow, you level your group up to level 1 and start the adventure Born to Die. And so on. So every chapter is a separate adventure, and the group levels up after each adventure concludes. So by the time you finish, you'll be at 10th level. For chapter 12, the end is near. And an interesting thing about this campaign is that it does have it has a story. It has a main plot, but all of the adventures that are in this book are not necessarily directly linked to that main plot. In fact, several of these are adventures that really have nothing to do with the main plot, but they highlight different aspects of the game. So if you want to run a fairly loosely based campaign that does have a plot, but you want the flexibility of doing other things and not necessarily want to tie yourself into every adventure having to progress the main plot, then this is a good campaign for you, because that's exactly what this campaign does. Now, for me, my style of DMing is that I like every adventure to further the plot or further the plot line of the campaign that I'm running. So I actually modified this campaign significantly to fit my DMing style, and that's okay. Every DM runs their campaigns the way that they feel more comfortable, in the way that is best for their group. So it's perfectly fine to do that. You're not breaking any laws by doing that. And I don't think that Mr. Schwab would be too concerned about you doing that either. But I did use the majority of the adventures in this campaign. I did use Harvester of Sorrow, which highlights one of the monsters in the core rulebook, which is known as I forget off the top of my head, but it is it was an organ filch, and that is a monster that is part of a grouping known as harvesters, which is unique to this campaign. I'm going to show you no, I can't, I guess. Well, maybe I can. Here's a little picture of one of the harvesters. That's actually a tier thief there. The organ filch is a monster, basically, that let's see, what's the description here? An organ filch goes about covered by a hooded canvas cloak that's stained with blood from previous hunts. And what they do is they they replace the organs in their own body by stealing organs from other living creatures. And so they might cut out your liver, or they might cut out your eyeball, or they might cut off an arm. Pretty gruesome. So anyway, the first adventure highlighted that creature. And then you had the Born to Die adventure. I also ran that one. I ran the Chapter 4 adventure, Curious Case of the Errant Swine. And I also ran the Temple of Shadows. I started to diverge from the adventure with the Moonspire. I actually ran the Moonspire, but I changed it so much that you wouldn't recognize it from the one in the book. I did run Minds of Madness, also changed it significantly. And I totally skipped the Chapter 8, In the Name of Love, and also Chapter 9, Shadows in the Mist. I did run Chapter 10, Chapter 11, and Chapter 12, but I modified those pretty significantly as well. So just to kind of give you an idea of what this adventure entails, the main plot is that a cult known as the Cult of Shadows, or the Brotherhood of Shadows, I should say, is active in the town of Crossings, and it is attempting to do what cults in this world do, and that is to summon bad things. But in this case, they were actually trying to do the worst type of summoning, and that is to actually summon the demon lord itself into this realm, which would be bad because the demon lord wants to destroy this realm. But apparently this cult thinks that that's a good thing for some reason. Nobody said that the cults had to be logical. In fact, this cult is pretty batshit crazy, but they had resources and they had people in powerful positions in Crossings to help them get a ritual underway that would open a portal that would bring the demon lord into this realm. Now, there was a number of things that had to happen in order for that to occur in the last chapter. And one of the main things was to acquire something that is known as the Eye of the Demon Lord, which is a relic that is kind of missing at the beginning of the adventure. You get clues about it, and then as the campaign progresses, the bad guys get a hold of it and they use it to start the ritual. And then by the time you get to the last chapter, the ritual is well underway, and the players are hard pressed to get it stopped before it's concluded. But one thing I love about this adventure, and when I first read it, I almost squealed with delight. But let me see if I can get to it without showing too much, because I don't want to. I don't want to violate any type of copyright laws or anything like that by showing too much of the material. But this is the last page of the last adventure, and it basically shows a timeline of what happens. And if the heroes fail to stop the ritual, then the very last thing that happens at 1 a.m. is the demon lord emerges from the void and begins to devour the world. The end. I love that. I loved it when I read it. I still love it. There is no assumption that your heroes are going to be successful. In fact, there is a good chance that they won't be successful and that this eventuality will occur. Now, hopefully, they can pull it off and they can, save the world. But the assumption is that this is just one of many end of world scenarios, and the next one is just right around the corner. So even if they do manage to stop this particular apocalypse from occurring, the next one is probably already in the works. Because remember, the whole premise of this campaign world is that it is on the verge of collapse. It is in the throes of its apocalypse, and nothing really is going to stop that from happening. The heroes can try, and they may stave it off for a time, but eventually the demon lord will come and do his thing. But the heroes don't need to know that. Give them a little bit of hope. They need to feel like they can stop the demon lord from destroying everything, and by letting them finish the campaign and be successful, then that gives you an opportunity to run more adventures in this world with different um, uh, apocalypse scenarios. And there's a number of those. They're called Shadow. They're called the Demon Lord Shadow in the core rulebook, and it gives you ideas on different end of world scenarios. And I'll cover that in another video at some point in more detail. But um, I love them. Each one of them just gives you another way to bring about the gruesome end of your campaign and destroy the world. But anyway, this particular one is uh, designed to have the heroes stop this cult from opening a portal into the void that allows the demon lord to come through and destroy the world. So if they manage to stop the evil Ketendramus, who is the main cultist villain of this adventure, if they manage to stop him and his dark brothers from succeeding in this ritual, then the portal closes and everything is back to normal, and they live to adventure another day. However, they'll be 10th level, and there's no more levels to advance in this game. It only goes to 10th level, so they would really have to retire their characters at that point and start new ones, and you would have to start a new campaign at 0 or first level at that point, or wherever you want to start it. All right, so anyway, that's this particular campaign. There is another campaign that has been released, and that is not one that I have read, but it is in conjunction with the Freeport Kickstarter that Robert Schwab did. Now, you may be familiar with Freeport because Freeport was a campaign setting that was developed to be, I think, Green Ronin. The company Green Ronin was the originator of that campaign and that setting. And it was designed to be generic so that you could fit it into any campaign world. So I've seen it in a couple different places, but Robert Schwab decided, to be a good fit for this campaign world. So he did his version of it, redid the actual first 3 modules, originally 3 modules, and then there was a full 1 to 10 or 0 to 10 campaign that was also designed with the Freeport setting in mind in the Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign world. So, and again, that's the campaign world's called Earth with a U, URTH. All right, so that is Tales of the Demon Lord, and that is campaigns for Shadow of the Demon Lord. Now, just to kind of reiterate a little bit, it is theoretically possible for you to run a full campaign in 11 sessions, assuming that you keep each individual session focused on the adventure and really just kind of get to the bare bones of the adventure. What's the adventure about? Get right to it. Don't do a lot of goofing around during your session. Really maximize the time that you have with your players and get through each adventure in one session. You can get it done in 11 weeks if you play weekly, or 11 months if you play monthly. But at any rate, 11 sessions is what you would be able to finish a whole campaign in, which, if you play weekly, you could play multiple campaigns during the course of a year. I don't know about you, but for me, an average D&D campaign would take more than a year just to do one campaign. And most often it wouldn't even take you all the way to 20th level. But an 11 session campaign in Tales of the Demon Lord will take you from 0 to 10th level, which is the full range of levels in the game. So I think that's an awesome concept. I'm going to actually, in my next campaign, I'm going to try my darndest to do that in 11 sessions. And, I'm probably going to write my own adventures for that, because even the adventures in this book, they're short, but they got a lot of meat in them. And so you could easily get caught up in role playing, or you could easily get caught up in it, exploring and really drag an adventure out over multiple sessions if you want to. If your group is, the type of group that will, be compelled to do more role playing and more exploration and stuff like that, or even combat. If they fight everything that they encounter, then the combats could drag out over multiple sessions. But anyway, it is theoretically possible. I haven't done it yet, but I am going to try next time. So if I succeed, I'll come back and let you know how it worked. So anyway, that should wrap up this particular episode. And next time, I'm not sure what I'll talk about. Let me look at my handy dandy note card here. I might start going into supplements, or I might talk about how combat works, because I guess you probably want to know how you actually run the game, and how things work. So I'll figure it out. At any rate, between now and then, let me go ahead and let you guys go, and I'll give you a hearty hail.